Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Gwi Widayani with the other authors Dharma Husni Yahya and Ivan Iskandar. At the fifth iCollide event today, we are going to present Students' Motivation in Online Learning, a survey of primary 2 students at Shavana Islamic School. Well, the current issue which is still happening nowadays and gives some impacts globally is COVID-19 pandemic. It highly affects on some important areas, especially education. As we know that school in Indonesia have remained shut since March 2020, and we have experienced 57 weeks of total duration of school closures. And moreover, according to global monitoring of school closures, pandemic has recently affected and altered the learning ways of 68,265,786 Indonesian students, consisting pre-primary, primary, secondary, and tertiary education, as you can find on the table here. But surprisingly, the data shows that primary students is the highest to be affected by this pandemic. Furthermore, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought new challenges to teaching and learning for teachers, students, and families, especially for the lower level of education like primary students who are considered as the young learners. They need to stay at home, study with their teachers through some learning platforms, and do so many assignments. In fact, online learning still has some problems to be fully applied during hard situations. The immediate problems were lack of access to resources and infrastructures to conduct online classes, increased workload at home, mental stress, and uncertainties due to corona pandemic. This research was conducted by Sharma and Baum in 2021. Actually, there are some research were conducted to investigate students' motivation in online learning, but at the higher level. And the research findings show that the psychological impact of students on online learning during COVID-19 pandemic are varied. For example, the students are getting bored with online learning, especially for the first 2 weeks of learning from home. They also have the bigger anxiety and also emotional disturbances. And then, based on UNESCO data before, the primary get the greatest impact of this COVID-19. That's why it is very essential to investigate the primary students' motivation in online learning. So later on, teachers will be able to identify, then employ certain strategies to cope with. Okay, we come for the next slide. And as we know that online learning is defined as learning that takes place partially or entirely over the internet. And also, we can find that overall students were still unsatisfied since the uneven infrastructures of internet connectivity, for example, or maybe learning arrangement, which is not good. And motivation is needed to conquer all obstacles, especially occurring during online learning. And motivation itself can influence what we learn, how we learn, and when we choose to learn, as Kong and Usher 2012 stated. As some researchers agree that motivation plays an important role in contributing the learning success. The teacher must be very carefully aware of this. And the previous study, which was conducted by Professor Brad D. Jones, PhD, he is a professor of education psychology program from Virginia, USA. He proposed the model, namely music model. And this model is actually have 5 key principles as you can find in this table. And E stand for empowerment, U stand for usefulness, S stand for success, I stand for interest, and C stand for caring. And empowerment means that the students feel empowered for having the ability to make decisions. Usefulness means that they realize what is the benefit for the students, for example, especially for the learning. And also success means that they believe that the students can succeed if they have extra effort. Interest means that they are interested in the content and also the activity. And caring means that the others in the learning environment care about them, especially for the learning and them as a person. So this is adapted from Jones Beatty 2018. And the next one later on, we are going to also discuss for the music model of academic motivation inventory. We come to the next chapter. This is methodology. So this research actually used quantitative research by survey. So the subject in this study were 20 students at Primary 2 in Shavana Islamic School, Tangerang, Indonesia, who received online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. The instrument used in this study was survey data, and the survey is in the form of questionnaires, which is taken from the music model inventory and delivered from the Google form and then also distributed to the students. So the survey that was made aims to reveal in detail the students' perception, which then leads to students' motivation in online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the type of survey using the Likert scale and taken from the music model of academic achievement by Brad D. Jones. And at the end, the data was interpreted using the guideline from music model inventory for primary school, as you can find in this table. So we come for the findings and discussion, and actually we break down the findings into two category. The first one for the individual analysis and the class analysis. So let's discuss one by one. So after we get the data from the students' questionnaires, and then the result was presented in this table. So as you can find here, there are three figures, figure 1, 2, and 3. So based on this diagram, it can be seen that each student has different perception which resembles each component of music model. Assessing students individually will make teachers able to know who need motivation and who are not. As it is shown in the table of the students' perception, you can find in figure 2 here that actually as 9, for example, they need the empowerment, and then it means that this table show you about in which component that they have less motivation. So the teacher later can improve, and also they can try to give the motivation a lot to the students. And then also as 9, as 18, as 20, for example, you can find that they are low in interest component, for example. So it means that these students need the motivation in this component. And the last one is S10. He or she needs the motivation again, or maybe more on the caring component. Okay, so you can find this individually for the student, and then it can help the teachers also to identify what is the proper strategy to employ in the classroom. We go to the next analysis. This is the class analysis. So actually, since the teacher should be aware of students' motivation to achieve the better learning result, thus assessing the whole class seems better. This aim to know the motivation of students' condition in a whole class with certain subject. As this study was conducted in analyzing the students' motivation in online learning at English, so teacher will use the result to reflect on his teaching, then notify in which component of music model it to be motivated. As it is presented in this chart, you can find in this diagram that actually around 18% and also 19%, so they are having the different percentage for each component, MUSINC. Okay, and then after that, by this result later on, it is easy for the teachers to focus on the lowest component and find out the proper strategy to achieve better learning result. So this is very beneficial for the teachers. Okay, so we come to the conclusion that as we try to conclude from the finding before, that motivation is actually something that we can assess both individually and class as the whole. And also from the finding before that we find empowerment and success component are still very low in primary 2 class. It means that the teachers need to pay attention for these two aspects. And then later on, the teachers also try to employ the suitable strategies. For example, here, if you know that the students, for example, less motivation in empowerment, so you can try to set the strategy like let your students share their work or ideas with the class, for example, or try to assign the problems with multiple solution methods. Or maybe if your student is low in success components, so you can try to set the strategy like take a day to review, cover needed prior knowledge in warms up, and the last one, for example, give lots of feedback, positive and constructive. Okay, I think that's all our presentation for today. We hope that it will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.